I think now it's 7:05. So let's start. Around around 10 students are here on this, and around 20 are there in the YouTube. So I'm sure that more students will join. So let's start this session. So good evening, friends, and today is the first lecture of our new course, Digital Innovation, Public Policy and Governance. And I am so happy to have my friend Shrikant here with me on this course. He is presently based in Germany, and he's done his master's in public policy from a German university. And he's a digital innovation consultant. So I welcome him on this course on Digital Nalanda. And I sincerely believe that this course will help our students to get a glimpse of what digital innovation is all about, and also what is its impact on our governance, on our economy, on us. So I welcome Shrikant. So thank you, Shrikant, for joining, and over to you now.
Thank you very much, Anup. So this is a great opportunity for all of us actually to interact with each other. So it's not just, like I am talking and then you guys just listen, but it is more of a, we will make it interactive and take questions, and, we will make it more.
Shrikant bhai, can you just Abhi stop sharing so that first you talk and then you can share? Just stop sharing. No. Yes.
Sure. So, yeah, thank you very much. So this, let me just give you some background about me, and then, we will go into the course and how it is structured and what all we discussed today and how we will go forward. So I am Shrikant, as Anup has introduced me. So I live in Germany. I studied here and I worked for 3 years now in Germany as a digital policy consultant. Before this, I was in India. I worked in mostly digital and technology companies, but mostly in the market strategy and corporate strategy roles. But I felt, there is a huge impact after the AI data economy and other lot of digital tools have started impacting not just market, but they have started impacting the lives of the people in terms of society, economy, politics, and our way of we govern our own systems. So that's when I thought, it's like I should get out of this business and corporate world and start looking at and studying this the whole phenomena, right? So this course is about that. So how it will impact. But before going there, let's see what actually innovation is all about. Because we keep hearing everywhere innovation, right? So innovation has become a universal term now. So without innovation as a word, without saying that, I don't think so there is a news piece or a newspaper, or even it is a business or political newspaper or a debate, nothing goes without mentioning innovation as a word. So where it started, and how it evolved, and what it entails, and then what is innovation and digital innovation, both how they are different or how they are similar, and different terminologies, right? And then this we will see now. Then we will slowly understand where the opportunities are for this, and then the career paths and other avenues, so that you have some questions in the end. Then we can take the questions, and then we see how we go forward in the next few weeks, right? So this is 10 session course. That's how we have structured, and each class, each session would last about 1.5 hours to 2 hours. So it's written 2 hours, but it may somewhere between 1.5 and 2 hours. And let's start now. So this is the course outcomes, the expected outcomes, what do we do? So we will explore the key concept terminologies and what actually innovation is, how digital transformation is different from digital innovation, and how digital innovation.
श्रीकांत भाई, कैन यू जस्ट इसको आप फुल स्क्रीन कर देंगे स्लाइड शो को?
Just
स्लाइड शो ऊपर टैब दिया हुआ है, ऊपर स्लाइड शो. हाँ.
That okay now?
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, sure. So, so we will see these terms, how they are different, how they are similar, and how they are related to public policy, the field of public policy. So, in the course of time, in the course of this whole sessions, so we will also explore actually what is public policy also, because without knowing public policy, it's also difficult to just talk about innovation and digital innovation and then its impact on society and governance and all that. So we also need to have some kind of an understanding what public policy is, how it is relevant to today's innovation context and innovation, digital innovation. So that we will take in the later part, and this is how we structured. So the another important facet of this course is understanding who are the stakeholders who are involved in this process, because digital innovation is not about just a company is innovating and we are all getting this the products, services, or benefits of this. It's not that. There are much broader ecosystem involves in digital innovation, or innovation first and then digital innovation in the later stages. So this digital innovation process or innovation process, this process is about the governments supporting the private enterprises, and private enterprises demanding or lobbying for such policies which enable digital innovation to happen within the private enterprise realm. But at the same time, there is also a broader ecosystem involved in this. It is academic institutions, universities, and people itself, and the media, and you have civil society. So these all, there are pulls, pushes, and there is also somebody favors some kind of innovation. Somebody, some sections don't want that kind of innovation. So why this happens? What kind of conflicts happen, in this arena? So this also is important for us to understand, because digital technology is not just everything is not beneficial to society, and at the same time some people argue that digital innovation is kind of taking away our privacy, and it is more of a capitalist mode of production. But look at what it can do from alternate perspectives. So how it can advance some kind of sustainable goals, inclusive participation and equal opportunities, and it can even democratize certain spaces. So that is also important. But at the same time, it can also be restricted to certain communities, certain spaces, and who has power, who has the historically who hold the power to control the resources, to control the dominance, to dominate economy and politics. So these things are very important to understand how technology is deployed, used, and implemented. So that's where we need a stakeholder understanding or analysis. Then we will come to tools. Actually, what kind of tools we need to analyze and understand these stakeholders, and what kind of roles they play in digital innovation process. So that's why it is a second one, as I listed. But it may come later in our in our sessions. It is not that it will come only in the second part, or it will disappear later. No, this is a thread where we'll continue to understand, analyze, and make sense out of it, what it is. And third theme would be something like the discourse analysis, right? So how do we understand the digital and data economy, and how this whole digital economy or digital society, what we call is shaping, and how they shape each other, basically. So if you see, the technology once developed in a university or research centers, and they come to they are applied, they come to an applied field, like let's say commercialized form of technology comes into a social life. So then the society started shaping it, right? So it shapes how the technology should be, so when they use, the consumer demands something, the user demands something, so based on that it goes through changes. And at the same time, then certain pockets of this technology, the segment, it becomes dominant, and then there are monopolies are created, or there are certain cases where there are certain social harms are developed. Let's say a fintech company, like a technology company which is into financial services. What they do is they give, some of them are illegal. They give loans, and they say, if you don't pay loans, we will take all your data, since you are a digital consumer. So because you took the loan on the platform, on the digital platform, on a technology platform, and then you have given your all the data, access to your data. So they take the data, they threaten the consumers. So these kind of harms also are possible, in the digital realm. So how, and then government pitches in, and then makes a policy, makes a regulation to make these platforms illegal, or these kind of business models are illegal. So then it is shaping in a different way the whole industry. So it's not free for all, but there is a regulated environment. So that shapes a new technologies to take shape. Like let's say reg tech, we call reg tech, which is like regulation technologies, right? A technology how inbuilt privacy is possible. So the technology products where you have a privacy by design itself, so those products come. Then what it means? It means, so constantly all these forces, social, political, economic, all these actors with each other, they shape technology, and by shaping technology, they constantly interact, and they are also again their ideas, their own interactions shaped by the technology. So it's a continuous process. This is called co-productionist process in a science technology studies parlance. So we need to so that's why the analytical approach is how we analyze, why we analyze, and what kind of theories are emerging in this space, what kind of discourses are emerging. So how do we understand these discourses, these tools? So this is important. So then let's see the other facet of that. Now, this is very broad societal, connotation, what do you say? Connotations, what we just spoke. But the next one is more of a how national and in a nation state framework, how they work, the innovation policies, how the regulatory frameworks operate. And some regulatory frameworks are benefit people, some regulatory frameworks benefit companies. So how do they develop these, so that you understand, so there is a government intention that to control these technologies, to regulate these technology, sometimes for good, sometimes it's even for bad. Let's say internet, right? Internet is free for all. It is one of those, free for, when I say it's the cost, obviously there is a cost for it, but once you pay the price for accessing it, it should be equally accessed by everyone. Internet governance doesn't have a regulatory means, like somebody is regulating internet, how internet has to be used. But we developed certain regulatory systems to kind of ward off threats from different actors. So something like fraud, something like abuse. But at the same time, governments also use regulations to basically curtail freedoms. So let's say internet blockades. So what happens when you block internet for political means and political ends to achieve political goals? So then your freedom is curtailed. So which means actually it is directly conflicting or interacting or intervening with the constitutionally guaranteed, your human rights. So that's a fundamental problem now. So this has to be understood even when you are making a digital policy, innovation policies. So how these innovations are going to either harm or benefit, and how to govern them, how to regulate them, how to control them, but at the same time not intervening with the fundamental rights. So that's what we will discuss this in this theme. And the last theme, so how do we identify in all this maze? This is because we are new to this space. We know this is benefiting us. We know this is going to give us more productivity. We know this is going to make us more efficient, and this also can advance some kind of a human development goals. But at the same time, how do we make this more inclusive, more harmless, more the players who are developing these technologies, who are innovating, so how do they behave, how they should behave responsibly when they are developing, when they are deploying these technologies, when they are using these technologies, so when they make us use these technologies. So that's a very important facet of this program. So the last one is, for me, that is the most important to understand digital innovation. Not that the others are not important. This is important because that is what we all aim for, right? So we all need a space which is harmless for ours, but at the same time the coming generations and the young people and who are coming next to us. So we leave a safe, sustainable space. So that should be the any innovation or any development. The goal of any development or innovation should be. So let's go for the next one, which is interesting one for all of us. But I will briefly. It's self-explanatory, but at the same time, it's like we will come back to this with in a question and answer session. There are ample opportunities because, as I said, digital innovation and digital technologies are taking shape that is unprecedented today in our society, in our economy, and then even governments use for all purposes digital technologies. So now increasingly, digital innovation policies are becoming, a place for opportunities for everyone. So if you want to, grab these opportunities, what do we do? So obviously, the first is you educate and you learn how you want to, enhance your knowledge, and how you want to enhance your capacity to do a rigorous research in it, and then become an expert. So then these are some of the areas you go. You go into Masters in Public Policy, or you study technology policy. There are specific courses, not just only broader public policy, but there are technology policy courses where the Masters is possible. In many universities, I'm not sure about in India. In India, mostly it's a broad, you have public policy and then technology policy, maybe a one or two courses. But there are also some emerging courses are appearing these days, but I'm not sure really how far the universities are now offering these courses. But yeah, in mostly in the global north, that is what we refer to the Western countries, you have many universities offering technology policy specific courses and digital policy specific courses, and even platform economy, future of work, and some of them are very particular to AI ethics, and how AI ethics are shaping, AI is shaping our ethical frameworks, our societal goals. So these are some of the courses you have an opportunity to pursue. And there are other opportunities where you have interest in this field, but you don't have a degree right now, but you want to develop some kind of an expertise. You can join some of these non-profit organizations which are there are plenty in India, and there are also global non-profit organizations which are, some of them are working in rights advocacy, and some of them are working on a kind of a mix where they advocate economic advancement, but at the same time protecting the rights of the people. And some of them are academic institutions, think tanks, and policy research and consulting. So all this is possible. And government. So these days, governments also need expertise. So they want they want people to shape their policies, to at least to give them the advice how they can come up with their own innovation strategy, because innovation is also, in a new liberal sense, it is it gives a competitive advantage to nations. So nation states wants to compete for better technological dominance, so that they can have more economic progress. So they want people to come and then work with them and shape their policies, give them ideas, and then do research. Like Niti Aayog has its own, its own division on innovation, competitiveness, and even digital policies, and even AI. They have an AI team, so which works on it. So similarly, you have obviously private corporations who are now increasingly, are concerned about the activism. So there is a huge activism in the civil society, where people demand privacy, data protection, and privacy from the digital products. And at the same time, they also demand certain kinds of ethical investments. So in that sense, the private corporations want to shape their own internal policies and align that with the government policies. And at the same time, they also want to lobby. Sorry. Yeah.
Sorry, Srikant. Yeah. Please carry on.
Yeah. So there are number of teams where they employ, the policy expert, especially the technology policy, because they have deep pockets, like they have resources, they have money. So they are the first one to employ people from public policy, and people from, who studied technology policy or AI policy, or who have studied philosophy, because social science, the first time social sciences has, as a discipline, social sciences have got some kind of attraction in corporate world, because of the one is users demand, and the even ethical investors or impact investors, they're called, who want to invest in companies who they behave responsibly, they innovate responsibly, and they deploy ethical products, ethical services, and do deploy ethical practices in their businesses. So they want people to advise them, what is ethical, what is unethical, because it's not easy, right? So for us who see from outside, it looks a lot easier, what is good, what is bad. But what is good, when you go and then understand the business imperatives, like let's say profit versus ethics, what is important now? So how do I strike the balance? How do I give returns to my investor, but not compromising on the ethical issues, ethical considerations, and at the same time not to overstep the regulation. So there are regulations are emerging every week. We see a new regulation coming to control the technology products, and to regulate and govern technology products and services. So that's another field, where you, but at the same time there is also some design, in the private enterprises, where they want to, people often criticize private enterprises for ethics wash, right? So in the name of ethics, you say we have a ethics policy, but you don't want to comply with the regulation. So you come together. So like, let's say the big firms come together and they publish their own ethical practices. They say we are following this, so we don't need any heavy regulation because we already have an ethical policy for our products and services. So but that is not acceptable, because what is ethics to you as a company, it may not be applicable to everyone. So the governments, on the other hand, are supposed to work for people, work for public purpose. So they have a better understanding of how this should be shaped. So that is the idea, at least in democratic societies, in societies where the public purpose is understood. Even in non-democratic societies, let's say China, right? China has its own huge technology in sector, so which grew unprecedented in unprecedented terms last 20 years. So now they see the harms by technology firms. They see social harms where technology firms are taking data and they threaten people, and at the same time they make people indebted, and the consumerism is the growing consumerism is threatening the social cohesion, and there is always a threat to the social harmony. So these things, if you want to arrest this, then you need to regulate. Otherwise, the profit motive will take over the ethical framework. So that's so what the companies get together, and then they try to scuttle the regulatory process by lobbying, by advocating their own, that's called ethics wash. So similarly, companies are supposed to be sustainable, and their products should be sustainable, their services should be sustainable, they should comply with the green regulations, which are affecting climate change in a big way. So digitalization process also contribute to climate crisis. So to scuttle that, obviously you need certain regulations. So people say, a lot of companies don't want to comply with that. So they say they resort to greenwash. What is greenwash? Greenwash is basically, you say your product is, it's sustainable, and it has, it consumes less water or electricity, and your products are, completely neutral to the pollution neutral. So all this this is called greenwash. And then you say, but in reality they don't really have those standards, and then there is no way to measure it. So when you don't have a way to measure it, then you always try to fool the customer, fool the governments, full society, and then you resort to again profit motive. So that then one need to be careful which company we are joining, where we are how we need to shape our own career to help the last one, right? Justice oriented, where public purpose oriented driven strategies are driven goals we need to support. So that comes here. And of course you can turn as an entrepreneur, right? So the innovation, right? So if you're innovative enough, so you can start your own consulting firm, you can start your own research and advocacy and rights organization, you can start your own education and training institute, to provide knowledge, to provide workshops, and host of other things. And similarly, you can start, community-driven solutions, like you come together as a community, as a one collective, and then start your own platform to offer these services or products. If you are really interested to become an entrepreneur, and you have competencies, you have a capability to offer the products and services, both ways, like in a digital innovation products or digital transformation products, or the policy products. The both ways, you have, if you have knowledge, skills, and ability to recruit people as a and work as a collective, not like one entrepreneur who is a leader, who is like superstar, but everybody is a star in that, right? So if you have those kind of goals, you can always work. It's one of the best ways to be an entrepreneur. And yeah, we'll come to that in the last question and answers. When you have, if you have any questions, then I can take it, and then we can discuss that in more detail. And yeah, so let's see now, what is innovation? So simple dictionary term, it's actually a new idea, right? So new idea, a new process, a new action. We think something, it's creative, and you want to improve something, and then you apply it to improve, or to increase productivity, to reduce time, to deliver something. So that is basically, in a simple terms, it's innovation. This term goes back to 1880s, so which means actually we think innovation is a new mantra. No, it's been there forever, in the sense, almost 200 years, 120 years, I'm sorry. So 120 years or 140 years, but it didn't have the real understanding. So in the sense, that time innovation means sometimes even it is a negative, it had negative connotation. So innovation is something unusual, right? Something which is like disruptive, something which is abnormal. That's how people perceived. But in later years, so a lot of people, saw value in it. So if somebody is creative, somebody wants to disrupt, somebody wants to give a new idea, and which can be, applied to a real life challenge or problem, and solve real life challenges. So that came to be known as innovation in the later part of 18th century, which is like 1920s and 30s. And there is a context to it, because post-industrial revolution, or over the time, so you have you had crises, right? One after another crisis you had. So that's what Joseph Schumpeter, he describes it as a creative destruction. Innovation is a process of creative destruction, which means you create something which is a new idea, but in the process you destroy the old idea. Like, let's say we didn't have any kind of automobiles, right? 200 years ago, we didn't have any automobiles, but we had carts or whatever, the very rudimentary mobility vehicles. But we also didn't have a railroad. We didn't have roads. So what we see today, those modern roads, we didn't have. So but if you create railroad, then obviously what happens is the rail track and the rail, which gives more comfort, more convenience, and it gives it saves more time for people. And then you go in a normal road, which is actually that's becomes obsolete. And now after that, you introduce automobiles, which actually kills the the previous what you already had. And now the new innovation, but this is not an invention. There is a distinction. We will come to that. So invention is basically, it's like it's a unidisciplinary, right? You go into the lab, and then you focus on how I discover something. There is a problem. That problem needs to be solved. You know the problem, and then you want to solve it, and you go to the lab or research institute or a university, because that's how the invention started, right? In a university setup. So in a modern terms, I'm talking about the industrial revolution and just post Renaissance period. So that's how in the West, the inventions and discoveries and later part innovations, these all one after another, these terms emerged, and then they have, they have acquired meaning in the later period. So this creative destruction is a part of the capitalist system, basically. So you have a one capitalist system where you produce something, you create a market for it, but it's not because consumer demands it, because consumer doesn't demand, because consumer is termed as sovereign, right? Sovereign in terms of neoliberal or neoclassical economics. So consumer has his own sovereignty, his own autonomy. So where he decides what to buy, what to sell, what to he determines what can be consumed. Based on that demand, things are produced. But in creative destruction, it's not possible. Consumer wouldn't know actually what really is going to come and how he has to create that demand. And the autonomous consumer or sovereign consumer doesn't have power to determine what actually is going to come to the next. It is actually, Schumpeter says, it's an entrepreneur who does it. So entrepreneur is the one who basically gets this idea. He's also an innovator who gets this idea. So how people can be given certain kinds of new ways to to new ways for convenience, and new ways for productivity, new ways to be effective and efficient. So these new ways can be products, services, or he creates by creating all these new markets itself and tweaking certain models. He can create new business models. So this entrepreneur is the sustenance. He sustains the capitalism. That's what he says. But at the same time, the same entrepreneur and innovator, once he acquires dominance because of innovation, he or she, whatever, so the I'm giving in a general context. The innovator goes to the market and he captures the market. And once he captures the market, he tries to dominate the market. Once he dominates, there is always a tendency to be monopoly. So once you become monopoly, so what happens is you stop, being innovative. So you don't create anywhere anymore, and you only, create surpluses out of it. And those surpluses are actually accumulated. So with this, these monopolies actually destroy capitalism. So destroy the innovation which preceded. Now a new innovation comes to succeed this and to actually to destabilize this monopoly situation, and the new players enter with the new innovations. So that is what is called creative destruction in Joseph Schumpeter's ideas. So that is most accepted today. This is the most accepted, definition in most of the Western contexts. So let's see what else are there in terms of innovation. So later there are a lot of socialists. So one thing what we should not forget is Schumpeter is not just an economist; he is also socialist, sociologist. So he sees innovation and entrepreneurship not in isolation, right? So it's not part of just a product creator or a market actor. He is also a product of society. The intersection of social and economic activities produce entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs are not produced by just by just the way of creating just products, because they understand what actually is required to sustain the convenient life, good life, and to improve upon, to give productivity. So that's where entrepreneur is basically born out of this socio-economic activity rather than a market activity alone. So that that's one point we need to remember when we understand Schumpeter. And Schumpeter himself is an Austrian American economist. So we have to be mindful about that, because when we analyze Schumpeter's analysis or Schumpeter's ideas, so we need to understand he's talking from his location, right? So his social and physical and geographical location, he's understanding the society from that perspective. So he started as a neoclassical economist in the earlier period, where his training was in Austria, but the later period, he even appreciated Marx. So the way Marx analyzed the whole capital and capitalist societies, so he understood how capitalism can destroy itself, because of not being innovative, because he sees innovation as a critical aspect for for economic development. One is development, but to come out of any crisis, because he is also a business cycle theorist in a sense. So his understanding is similarly like Marx. So he sees the business and the economic activity in cycles, right? So you develop the economic activity, and it grows, and once it becomes so dominant and it destroys itself because it cannot innovate anymore. So that's the point Schumpeter makes, and which actually he draws inspiration from Marx. So in his idea, it's more of a linear idea, right? So invention is the first, and then innovation gets diffused. So if you want to get maximum benefit out of innovation doesn't work in isolation. It has to get it has to get maximum diffusion, or it has to spread into different forms and different social orders in different markets, different segments. So then only it can succeed as an innovation. So that's where he says innovation alone is not a successful aspect. It has to be diffused, and once the diffusion takes place, it also gets imitated. So some of the classic examples you can see in today's world, you have iPhone, right? So Apple iPhone, what it does, Apple iPhone is not an invention, right? So the components of Apple iPhone is actually are coming from different parts of American ecosystem, the technology ecosystem, science ecosystem, and sometimes it also came from outside. So let's say the screen, right, touch screen, it actually was developed by American Army, the Army research centers. And similarly, Siri, which is basically the voice recognition and the automatic speech. So these all are not, the original conceptions are original inventions of Apple. And even microchip, right? So which is processor which you use in, which is like the most important aspect of mobile phone, are even the keypad. So everything comes from outside. What they have done is they have brought all these set of ideas to bring in one component, one product, to make it the most convenient and intuitive product for its consumers. So it's not that consumer demanded it at that time, but the innovator, entrepreneur conceived it. This should be a great product, and it will create a great market. So he understood the new market. He understood the certain kind of it's not demand, but he doesn't know whether there is a demand for this, but still he conceptually he understood this. So that's where the success comes. But what happened is it got diffused. This innovation got diffused into other sectors. So you can see, not today. It's not just in the mobile phone. It's in so many places where we see touchscreen. So touchscreen has become ubiquitous today. So that is, that's diffusion, right? So, and imitation. what is happening, with the different mobile phones. So everybody imitates today. So it's innovation doesn't stay with only Apple, but it is 100 other phones now today you have in the market, from China, from Japan, from Korea, from Taiwan. So you have so many phones varieties which have very similar features. So this is basically, this is how his ideas actually shaped. But there is other way to understand, which is basically, how knowledge is produced, right? So this is one way of understanding from economic and sociological perspective. But there is another way to understand the knowledge production purely from a sociological perspective, right? So how sociologically knowledge is produced, how these innovations happen, where it is coming from, but not in a only linear fashion, but they all can exist in one time space, time and space. That is also possible. That's what, this framework called modes of knowledge production, that tells us. So they say in the mode one, you have only one set of actors like universities and higher education spaces where the innovations happen. So inventions happen. There is a possibility of innovation as well, but they have to go out of this space of academic space. Then only they can become innovation, because as long as they stay within the academic space, there is no application of it, right? Commercially they are not viable. There is no usage, or from a wider public, wider society, it is not giving benefit. So then innovation invention remains invention. It doesn't turn into innovation in terms of Schumpeter's analysis. But in knowledge production, you have all three modes. The later are, it is not linear. These three exist today also, we can see this, right? So once a new invention happen in universities, they stay in sometimes university itself. They don't get commercialized. They stay in the universities, they stay in the higher education realm. But there are certain which gets outside of university, and they become commercially viable. They are applied to the society and markets, and then they create value. So that is called mode 2. In mode 2, you don't only work in one discipline, but in mode 2 you work with different disciplines, like like let's say biological sciences. Biological sciences working with engineering to bring biomedical engineering products. Similarly, biotechnology, where you work with scientists who are biologists, or genetic scientists with information technology researchers. So this possibility can quickly create applied innovations, where these inventions can go out into the market, or they are not just higher education institutions, but they can be together with the other institutions as well. And similarly, in the production knowledge production mode 3, it is even more dynamic. It's even more expansive. Like, let's say here you work with more actors. Like, you work with governments, you work with even civil society for to get a better sense of what kind of regulations government can bring. Similarly, civil societies can pressurize governments for certain kinds of products only, and sometimes civil societies can put pressure on both private entities and the government entities. So then what is developed in it's not just developed in just lab, but it can have multiple influences, multiple actors coming together to shape this. It's called sometimes open innovation also in today's terms. Many actors improvise a new idea or existing idea, and then make it more innovative. So today we are, we are seeing this more and more, and we are seeing the mode one is in a lesser terms, because the one is, so one thing we need to remember also, this is not all that good. Okay, so what's happening, like let's say the funding for universities, they're cut because when you have an industry collaboration, then only you will get funding, either from government or private enterprise. What happens then? The serious research takes beating. So then what is happening in mode 3 is not all that good. There are also problems there. So this is what we need to understand. It's like every aspect of the process, how innovation evolves, there is always a benefit, but at the same time there is also a downside to it. And so now what is happening is, from all this socio-economic and university education, scientific discoveries, and the innovation has now totally kind of become a business component, right? So we see innovation as more and more, we equate this with corporates, with startups, with the business entities, with commercial entities, and governments also think that without them it's not going to, innovation is not going to happen. That's another facet for innovation. So as a learner or as an observer, what you need to understand is, I'm not saying this is a prescriptive, I'm not prescribing this, right? So this is basically, I am just giving you how different views and different ideas exist in the process of innovation evolution. So basically, so you can see how OECD, which is intergovernmental or multilateral agency, right? So which is Organization for Economic Development Cooperation. So all the most developed countries are part of this group. So they see innovation this way. So which means actually, so the governments also see innovation as more aligned to the business, rather than is a very inclusive and very much part of the society, governments, and so all actors have a very equal stakeholder process in this. So they don't see that. That's another problem. To highlight that, I'm showing this. It's not that it's like this is how innovation is. And now let's see how this innovation and digital innovation differ, right? So innovation is sans digital technology, right? So it's not the innovation. When I say innovation, it can be anything. It can be digital innovation. It can be innovation without using any digital technologies. Like let's say let's 20 years ago, there was no 30 years ago or something, 20 years, but 30 years ago, there were no airbags in automobiles. But that's not a digital technology, right? So it's a safety product. So they have introduced the safety component, so that it's like it can give the user a better safety standard. So that's better protection. So that's an innovation, but that is not a digital innovation. That is a simple innovation. So digital innovation is basically, you bring a set of digital technologies together, one or more business digital technologies together, to either offer a new product or develop a new product or improve a product which is significantly improved, not just, it's like tweaks, but significantly improve the product and a process or a business model or a service. Then, but digital component is necessary in this to call it digital innovation, right? So digital innovation, when I say that, it means actually, how it all started. It started, see, the thing is digital, we call it today, but what is digital, what is analog, right? So that's another concept we need. So where digitization was always there when the computers came into existence. From then onwards, we had a digitization process where things which are in the physical realm, we started slowly making them computerized, but that is not a digitalization, right? Digital is from digitization to digitalization, there is a small transformation happened in the last 20 years with the advent of especially cloud, because you can, the first internet, obviously. So what internet made it possible is you can access data, you can produce data as a user, as an entity, as a individual, and as as an entity. Both ways you can produce the data, and this data or this what you produce can be accessed anywhere the networks are there. But with the advent of cloud, this has changed. Cloud has made the whole computerization or the internet tools also is more accessible, more in the sense the more interconnectedness, right? So you are now, you can access anything anywhere. You can use as everything as a package, and use as the way you want to use any any product or service or any digital aspect. So let's say sometime just 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it was not possible to search everything from a search engine, or it is not possible to access everything just sitting in a cafe. It's not possible to upload anything, it's not possible. But today it is possible, everything is possible, and it is images are possible and videos are possible. You can upload from anywhere, from anything. So what we are doing today, it's like this is all possible only because of you have internet, you have cloud, you have the computing power where it can process. So earlier, it's so slow we could not do anything, but today you have a fifth generation communication revolution. So it's 5G now, 4G to 5G we have graduated. So this progress has made it possible for us to create these products. Otherwise it's not possible. So similarly, what I said earlier, Apple iPhone, right? So it's a new product, but it's not an invention, it is an innovation where the set of components they have brought together and they offered this. And similarly, what is the innovative process? When you say the process can be innovative process in digital innovation, RPA, robotic process automation, which is basically you supply or you develop chatbots, and then they do or you develop bots online, and then they simplify the processes for you. So let's say chatting with a customer and interacting with others. So these all it's all possible now. So this is it's an innovation, because earlier already there was artificial intelligence. It is not that artificial intelligence was not there. Artificial intelligence has been there for now 60-70 years now. But with these internet and cloud, this has become possible. Similarly, the new business models, right? So what we see, these all are not inventions. Basically, they are all innovations, because all the tools were developed somewhere in some research lab, and they all became let's say Amazon was one of those first entity in 90s, right? In the mid 90s, who started taking the offers, started taking the orders online, for customers, and then they started delivering them. And from there, now we have come to completely automatized factories, and completely automatized logistics, and completely automatized customer interfaces. So these all are possible now. That is all it's a business model tweak, not a it's not a product. What you see, the Amazon, it's not just a product, but it is also a business model where the customer and the supplier both come together to a marketplace, right? It's a marketplace basically where you come together and then you interact, you sell or you buy, and then you see deem fit the value, whatever you pay, and then you get out. So that's how this models have emerged. And the same thing is called fourth industrial revolution. So why is it called fourth? Because the first three were not part of the digital revolution, right? So they are all they all has their own first is you have a agriculture, and then you have a mechanized or industrial revolution, and then you had a communication revolution, and then finally you have now the fourth industrial revolution, which is like digital revolution, different ICT tools, with the data as at its center, is now a new wave what we see. So our paradigm shift, we can say, in other words. And as I said, it's interconnectedness of the systems that enable network effects. What is network effect here? Network effects are basically, it's like once you go, let's say, a social media player, a social media platform. If there are only 5 people interacting on Facebook, so will you go and join? No, right? So it's not that, and if it doesn't have sixth person a space, then these 5 persons cannot make Facebook what it is today. So the value what you can derive is because of the more and more numbers join a platform. Because of that, the data is provided to this platform, and this data sharpens the whole business insight for that platform. Let's say let's take Amazon as an example again, because social media is of course the best example, but I would like to take Amazon also as an example to make things more clearer. So if Amazon has only it can only limit 100 customers, and then the 100 first customer has to pay more premium, or to access he has to struggle, or it is slow internet after 11th, after 101 customer, then they wouldn't come here. It is because the more and more people come to this platform, the more data you generate, the more you buy, and the more you generate reviews for them. Then what happens is the more and more you also generate business insight for them, right? As a collective consumers, you select, you give them insight by way of they collecting your data basically. So that's the model in network effects, how they work. And network effects actually started in communication industry. So it's like you have a more and more cellular customers in one operator. So it becomes the unit cost to offer the service is less. That's the economies of scale is more, and then that's how it started as a economies of scale. But later it has become much more than economics of scale today. Today it has become data is at the center of this network effects. So the data can be harvested, manipulated, harnessed, the way how they can generate more value for the business, the platform. So with that, what all these platforms are trying to do, they are trying to basically capture more market. By capturing more market, you basically dominate the market, and then you will have a very few people space in that market, right? So similarly, if you see any kind of a market, like let's say even large markets like India, so you hardly have more than 2-3 players which are like big e-commerce players, and the rest of them struggle and then they fade away. Similarly, social media, right? So after whatever the established ones which are for that purpose, let's say So for social interactions, you have Facebook, and for professional interactions, you have LinkedIn. And after one, the second is not possible today. You cannot have another Facebook today. So Facebook is, it's completely a dominant force in that space, and the second is not possible. Similarly, a political and a media space, Twitter is more popular. So now it's after Facebook and Twitter, and how many you have which are like really attracting more users on their platforms? It's not possible. So that is because of these network effects, right? So you go because there are many people, and then you keep adding more users, and the more users bring more data, and then more data brings more insight to them, and more insights gives them more better business strategy, how to capture more customers. So this is a cycle they work on. So with that, so they kind of get market dominance. So a lot of people termed it as a data as a new oil, a natural resource which has to be harnessed. Is that true? So that we will go in the next, we'll keep coming back to these slides. It's not that we will once we depart from here we will forget this. No, we are going to come back, because these all are questions which are important questions. Data is beneficial, but when it is used responsibly, when it is when you give equal opportunity, when this data is basically have a similar power, right? So everybody has similar kind of a power to govern their own data, to manage their own data, to have access to their own data, then it is meaningful. Otherwise it creates asymmetries, it creates unequal spaces. So, and it also creates power asymmetries, which are like unequal power statuses. So which turns into a more a major threat to democracy itself. And then then the what we have seen, so the innovation becomes its own destructive element. So so then we'll come back to these questions time and again. So now there are other terms we will see, because I want to introduce these terms in the early, because this presentation, this session is not structured in a way it's we will go one theme and then we will stay on the theme. No, this is because theme is broadly it's innovation, digital innovation, but we will also introduce slowly some concepts here, so that it's like we have some idea, and then when we go into different aspects, then we will know what we are talking about. Otherwise if you don't have now this understanding, then it's difficult to comprehend later. So see, digital innovation, we understood now what actually digital innovation means. But digital innovation, in a way, it is sometimes the most of the times it's spontaneous, right? So it's one person or a different set of persons or different set of entities or different set of actors come together, and in the process they bring ideas, or an individual brings idea. So these ideas they test, or they they implement, and then they become applicable in a commercial sense, and they make commercial sense, then it becomes successful, and then it becomes a successful innovation, and then it gets diffused, and then that's how innovation works. But digital transformation, on the other hand, is a process where you use these innovations and you try to transform your organizations, your processes, so that this gives you more value and streamline your workforce, or your your governance mechanism, your delivery mechanism. But this is not only true for only, I'm not talking about this is because a lot of times we hear these terms digital transformation in business sense, but it's not alone. These terms are not used, or they are not important or critical to only businesses. They are critical to others, because governments today have digital transformation projects, because governments also interact with large sections of people, and they deliver goods to them, public good. They may not be priced. Sometimes they are priced minimally, but sometimes they are not priced. And these public good delivery happens through digital means today. So then what happened, the governments also now adopted these innovations, and then they work on transforming their department, divisions, or segments, you call any you name any aspect of government today. They go through this process. Similarly, non-profit organizations, education institutions, you name anything, they all go through this process. But they are not innovating per se. Innovator is somewhere else. But the digital transformation is basically those innovations you bring here, and with a long-term vision, what you do is you implement those innovations to sustain and to make your organizations more stable, more streamlined, your processes more streamlined. So this is what you do. So this is the major distinction. This is a short-term process, digital innovation. Sometimes it can be longer, but it's usually you bring the innovation and then you go to the next steps. But transformation is not that. It is a continuous process. You keep working with your people, you keep working with in the organization processes, and then you transform all using the digital technologies. So that's the distinction between these two. Like we said, digitization and digitalization, these two also, because these terms are important. We should not get confused, right? So when we read this, they look similar, but when we are explaining to someone, or when you are doing research analysis, or you are studying, or you are you're pursuing career, then these terms on their own, very specific term, has its own meaning. So that's why sometimes people use interchangeably, but we need to use them with a little caution. Yeah. And so we have come to now the last kind of slide, but this is as I said, this is very important slide, because what digital innovation can do has it has its own implications, what we know. But what kind of implications, how we tackle them, and how we understand them, and how we explore them, these all are different questions we pose to ourselves. And at the same time, these are the big questions, not we are posing here, but they are posed by in academic segments, in governments, in among regulatory bodies, and among think tanks, in private sector, in civil society, everywhere they are posed, these questions. But the thing is, everybody has their own interest. Everybody has their own, because at the end of the day, the arena, political arena, which is like policy arena, policy making arena, right? So it's all about, about keeping your interest, and it's group interest, right? Serving the group interest, basically. So the interest groups, keep fighting for resources, keep fighting for, the power, space, everything. So these, if you want, a more equal power distribution, equal resource distribution, or just resource distribution, then then digital space also is a contested field for that. It's not because in the early phases of digitalization, people imagined the digital space to be more democratic, more equal opportunity space, so that people can access from anywhere in the world. So it is democratizing everything. But as time passed, we are seeing now those, what are true in the analog space, which means physical space or a normal political arena, or in the social arena, where, the order, like social order you have. So in every society, there is a social order. So how the social order is interacting with the digital space, and how certain groups control certain things, and certain group dominate certain spaces. So, and then there is a struggle for today, how we manage it, how we govern it, how governments step in and then give that space to everyone in a more equitable manner. But governments are not made up of only ethical frameworks, right? They are also made by people. So when I say people, so all there are historical and there are contemporary social and economic forces. They all shape the government thinking. So who shape that? Again, you have certain dominant narratives, dominant power centers. So they shape the government thinking. So when they are shaped by these forces, then government also is at fault. Many times we see the government thinking is not very different from the private enterprise thinking, or sometimes even it's worse, in some cases, some instances. So this paradox, so at on one side, government has to protect the interests of the people. On the other side, government is is captured by its own institutional capture, where the institutions are captured by the dominant players. So this paradox is playing on digital space too. So because digital space is not very different from the physical space, but digital spaces have certain other characters where it can give if governments and if we as civil society or as communities, we understand this space in a better way and in a manner where this can give access to everyone, but at the same time it can be also a safe space, and government thinking can be shaped from our demands as people. Then the policies can be formulated to that end, because that's how the policy world works, right? So you have interest groups. When the certain interest groups have a voice and it brings narrative, then these narrative can become a real advocate of those interests, the people's interests, the voices of the people. They go into the consultation process, and then those consultation process will get into the government stakeholders table. So this process is no different for digital space. So that's why the policy relevance for digital space is as important as any other space, and it's even more increasingly important because our markets, our lives, and we are more intricately connected to digital space today than ever, and it is going to grow more, not going to grow less, right? So it's going to grow more and increase our digital footprint and our presence in an even bigger way. So that's where but there are some questions we will answer, and we will explore together, and we will also try to understand these questions in a better way as we go along in the next 8-9 sessions or 10 sessions in the coming days, coming weeks. So what are these questions? These questions are fundamental today, are asked by many stakeholders. So let's say, are the startups are the solely responsible? So there is a thinking that in most of the spaces, this startup ecosystem is the place for innovation, and there is no other actor is more more important than this stakeholder. But that's not true. As we saw in the example of Apple just brought a lot of components which are developed by the government research institutions, and with the public funding, with public taxpayers' money, and which are the people who actually contributed. So which means actually the private enterprises are developing these technologies. They are in a way, we have to understand this also, they are in a way disruptive, but they are also incremental in a way, because there is a mobile phone was there. It's not that we jumped without any communication suddenly to iPhone. we had communication tools earlier, which are like analogous phones, and then they became electronic. They finally became mobile, where wireless phones, and then they became finally touch screen, where smartphones have come to, right? So there is a evolutionary path, gradual incremental innovation happened. It's not that it's completely disrupted, right? So there is a understanding that everything is disruptive, what we are saying, but that's not true. There may be some disruptions happen in the process, but these all are incremental, right? So, and startups are not, so the way we think, it's because we think this is coming from a grand narrative. As I said, there are certain groups which are their interests are more dominant and their narratives are more dominant, so we try to believe them. So that's where we think startups are this solely responsible. So we need to investigate this, right? So we will see what kind of analytical tools we need and how we analyze them. So whether it is true or not, this hypothesis, because certain sections of think tanks and media, they push this narrative, but this is not true. So this we will investigate. Similarly, the industry 4.0, right? This is a revolution, we say, but this revolution is solely shaped by startups. That's not true again, but there may be some bit of truth, because as Schumpeter says, this entrepreneurial spirit, which is basically the entrepreneurial as an innovator, he comes up with it. But that doesn't mean that entrepreneur is solely responsible for all these great things and he's a superstar, like Mark Zuckerberg is a superstar. No, that's not true. So we need to understand this. Then we will understand the power dynamics, in a digital space. Similarly, the next question is obviously, does the state have any role to play in digital innovation development? So of course, state has. So how startups have their own role, state has its own role. State by means, so it's people who in representative democracy or non-representative democracy or non-democracy democratic systems, every system, people, state is represented by people. So, if not a perfect democracy or perfect representation, there is some representation. So, but at the same time, the state resources are, even though they are not represented effectively, but the resources are from the people, right? So everybody contributes to innovation. It is not that some less and some more. It is that the power which shows some less, some more, but proportionate to their incomes, everybody contributes to innovation development. So innovation has to be seen in that way, in that light. Then we will see, innovation as a not just an end or as a solution, but it is also a means, but it is also a kind of owned by everyone, and everyone can get benefited, and everybody can control a little bit of power by understanding these narratives, these discourses basically. And so the digital innovation pushed techno solutionism further. Is that true? So we need to see how true it is. Some people say it's true. A lot of people have concerns. The state becomes, when state narratives are adopted from different facets of society, and similarly globalization impacts, right? So the globalization has its own role to play in shaping the local nation states or local governments. So how one sees technology, innovation, science, inventions, everything, we see from that prism too. So techno solutionism, when I say that, what it means is technology is always good, and it is value neutral, and it only brings good and positive tool, and it can solve all the problems what we have. So this, we often see this narrative as well. So but techno solutionism can lead to more dictatorial spaces too, right? So when governments think that the technology, we offer everything on an app, So what about 30-40% who don't have smartphones, who don't have digital literacy? What about them? So how do you bring them to that speed? So you cannot say that it's like only whoever has soft smartphone and whoever has digital skills and literacy, they can only they can be provided all the services. That's not a government, that is not a society, that is not a community what we want to live in. We this ought to be something different. So this has to be imagined something which is like everybody need to have access to everything. So for that, this we need to investigate this point. Similarly, how do we understand transnational digital dominance? So because there is one side you have local issues and in the nation state frameworks, but digital is pervasive, right? So it actually crossed the border without regulations in the very early, like Facebook, right? So there was nothing, you don't need office to have physical office, and then you don't need a license to operate Facebook in certain country. But later there are certain regulations started emerging. But when it started, Google, Facebook, they didn't need any office. They can go anywhere, and then they can access it. People can access them, and then they have become a dominant players wherever they entered. So that created a kind of people termed it as a digital colonialism, like where they take data from the places where they went, and then the countries where they went, the countries have become more of raw data providers rather than getting benefited from the data what these companies collected. Because if you collect data from us, we also need to understand what you're going to do with the data and how I am going to get benefited out of the data, right? So you're not going to keep the data and then you cannot have control over data, because this is a collective data. It is not a private data to an entity. It is a collective data of the people. And similarly, it is also personal data of people. Collectively it can make sense, but individually it is also an individual's data which actually you are giving. So what kind of benefit we are arriving, we are accruing by giving this data to big corporations. So this is a contested, it's a contestation. There is a contestation of digital sovereignty, between digital sovereignty and digital colonialism. So these we need to juxtapose these two concepts, and then we need to understand them better way, so that it's like we are not just only understanding the rights within the territory, within the borders, but from outside what kind of influences. Let's say one small example I'll give you. So Wikipedia, right? Wikipedia has, it is an open platform. It is free. Anybody can edit, and anybody can, but there is some checks and balances which are driven by the community, and it works as a collective, which is not a private entity, which doesn't, work on profit motive or shareholder interests. It works as a collective, and it works on donations from the people, so and charity. So, but Wikipedia's minuscule percentage come from African countries, and most of the developing countries, minuscule percentage of the people edit, write, and their content is there, which means today what you are seeing, the dominant narrative on Wikipedia, because we search on Google and we end up in Wikipedia, whatever the knowledge we want to, the first place of knowledge, like it's a landing, basically the first landing, right? The first landing is on Wikipedia. Then we go and then see if we don't get anything, and then we are not satisfied with that, then we will go to next 1 or 2 or 3 or 4th page. The study shows after 4th page, we don't go beyond that. The most of the people don't search on Google pages beyond 4th pages. Now, the Google's dominance can create some kind of an obstruction. If Google's algorithm is designed such a way, the first 4 pages can only be consists of this information, or information only from these information providers, then we are only able to see only that information, which means actually our freedom to explore, to free access to knowledge is limited. Similarly, Wikipedia, the knowledge what we get is mostly a dominant narrative, which actually is produced by the dominant communities across the globe. So now, so how do you understand this? Even altruistic vision of Wikipedia is not able to push this challenge away. This challenge persists. So then what to do? So what Wikipedia is trying to do is now they are going and they are activating the community initiative. They are activating communities in the sense they are asking the universities to volunteer from their kids, the students, and certain communities they are building in Africa, in Latin America, in Southeast Asia, so that they get these communities' aspirations and their narratives, their voices also are recorded as a history, as a contemporary, social, economic, and political narrative. So this has to be seen in this context, digital sovereignty and digital colonialism. Similarly, the role of regulation, right? So all this comes to now, how do we better govern? How we decrease this dominance of only few players, and similarly, how do we contain this power, dominant power, the actors basically who have dominant power, and similarly, how do we manage these power asymmetries? And so that for that you need regulations, because if you have the now automobiles have come to the emerged as a new innovation, and if you don't have traffic lights, so you are bound to have accidents. Similarly, any new innovation needs some kind of a governance and regulation, but that should not take away the rights of people. That should not take liberty, freedom of the people, and it should not disturb the social harmony. It should not so there are certain rules have to be made but at the same time it has to be, freedoms have to be protected, to say what you want to say, to rise up as a individual who has constitutional rights which are enshrined in constitution. So this is very important for any society or economy to progress. And so the role of community driven initiatives. Now this, once you have a government, you have private enterprises, both have their own problems, right? They have set their own set of issues dealing with power asymmetries, because they are captured by certain dominant narrative, dominant communities, dominant, so you need a different kind of initiative. So we will, explore this with the one, theoretical framework. So common pooled resources, concept by Eleanor Ostrom, so who was a Nobel laureate economist who tried this in a different context. But today, a lot of digital policy experts and other academics, they also suggest this for understanding digital and then to move forward to future, right? So let's say Uber, right? So Uber calls for partners, driver partners. They join Uber, and then first few months the salary is great, and then everything is great, and then they put pressure on them to have more rides, and then only they get incentives. Once they get more incentives, they will say, it's like, no, you are not able to do this, so you are intended to cut back, and then you have missed this customer or a passenger, you have missed the time, you have gone into a wrong direction. But the algorithm can go wrong, but still driver is penalized, right? But let's say people learned from Uber the innovation, what innovation Uber brought, a convenient app. What if all the drivers come together and then they pool the resources, in a territory, in a community, in a society, in a city? They come together and they start their own app, to muster the same kind of resources. So what if they do this? Similarly, what if all the vegetable vendors come together and then they start their own platform and then be a competitor for for all this grocery, online grocery platforms. So this is possible, but how do you do this? So there are always conflicts among the members, and leadership issues, power. So not easy to but the experiment say that this is possible. So we will see that in the later course of time. We will see how Eleanor Ostrom tried to tackle this, and can digital innovation advance justice oriented public purpose driven goals? So this is the crux of it. So as we first imagined, yes, digital is the can give equal access, equal equal opportunities, access to equal opportunities. It can be a great leveler in society, economy, and all that. But is it true? Is this happening really in today's digital space, as we already progressed 20 years, almost 20 years into digital revolution? So is it possible? And in future, how this looks actually? So this whole these goals, because everybody talks about these goals, but we also need to understand how who talks about it. If the government talks, what kind of intention? If multilateral organization or UN talks about, what kind of intention is there, who are behind it, and how they see these problems. And if civil society is talking about, what do they see? Like, let's say in India, right, there are civil society organizations, let's say NGOs and think tanks, who do have interest in rights, but many times you see that there is a problem. Their narratives, sometimes it's sided with government, and and certain narratives are left out, certain voices are left out. And if you see their governance, right, their own governance, so that's a very important thing. It's like how they are owned, who owns them, these platforms, these civil society organizations. Who are these employees, professionals, executives? Who design them? Who design their policies? Who design their advocacy programs? So who are at the helm? So these all are very important questions for digital space, because it's a new space. And if it is also captured by those from the previous, then what innovation can do benefit for us? So if it has to be it has to be a just a public purpose driven and space, then we need to understand these, and then we need to explore these, and we need to analyze, and we also need to look for answers, seek for answers, and we need to have those excluded groups and excluded communities, how they can have a equal power, equal space, equal opportunities on this on digital space. So this is for today. So I am now we are coming to an end. So now we can take questions, and thank you very much. I see a good number of people who have taken from here, from YouTube. If you have any questions, so we can discuss. So this is a great opportunity for me to interact with you all. So thank you very much. Thank you, Nalanda team, Anup Bhai. So it's a great experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shrikant Bhai. There is one question by Subhish Harikesh. He has put it on the chat.
Okay, I'm just seeing.
You are saying that these business models are also created by us, but it's not rewarded properly. Are there any study you can guide me on this? Subhish, I can unmute you. You can directly ask the question. Is it okay?
Yeah.
Subhish, I'm unmuting you. You can directly ask. I'm trying to unmute you. Can you just unmute yourself if you are there? I think he's not there, but this question he has put.
So I can give him direct him to certain material, certain literature. Yeah, but this is a good question. But when I say, I didn't say us, right? So us in the sense, so we as a part of the society. So as again, so there are the innovator. Innovator also is not a not evolved out of no sight, or he is from the society. He is from the same dominant structures, right? So the existing structures where certain dominant sections dominate certain spaces. So this, we know this, so in digital space also, all manifests like race, caste, color, creed, religion, everything manifests in gender, everything manifests in digital space as well. So similarly, the ownership also, right? So in India, we see that you have the platforms who own that, where the venture capital funding come from, so how government supports them. So these business models, how they are, they are either they are copied, imitated, because they are not original in India, right? The most of them are either copied or imitated from the already existing platforms. So they're in a way not really innovations, but imitations. So as Schumpeter said, they are imitations. But how they are imitating? Because already who has this, the resources to do it, to networks, the ones who have the backing of the government, the backing of the state, because their interests are served in the state statecraft. So this this is a classic example, how you see startups and these new business models, how they evolved in India itself. So they are not very different from the previous ones when it is when you see them from a societal point of view and the structural point of view, right? So they are same caste, same religion, same kind of people, all clique, right? They go to the similar kind of universities, they become friends, and they go to the same pubs in the evening. The venture capitalist, banker, and startup innovator, entrepreneur, and the policymaker, they all interact in their own way. These interactions um, make this happen. So this is not it's only limited to India. Same thing happens in the US. There are great examples of how the crisis, right, in 2008, the banking crisis, financial crisis in the US in the post Lehman Brothers. So how it happened? So it talks about this clique basically who enabled this crisis to emerge. So they are from the same universities. They are the ones who make the policies. They are the ones who are the regulators. They are the ones who are in the who started these the risk rating firms. So who rate these products which have gone to the stock market, and they have become so risky that the whole stock market collapsed, and so many people went jobless, and the economies collapsed. So this this is part of a bigger problem. That's what when we say why we need to understand the public purpose and the digital innovation in the context of justice, equality, freedom, liberty, and public purpose. So if you have to serve all this, yet you be innovative. So how do we do that? So that is where because there are a lot of studies, people are writing, but we have to also be careful who are writing that, right? So there is also the same thing exists in academia, in think tanks. So this is very important for us to understand. So similarly, you have to see who is doing this. So see, if I am talking about this is also my own experiential learning, right, which I am giving here. So which is basically has its own past. So we need to understand who is giving. So then you explore from your point of view. You use those analytical tools which are available for us, so which have really helped to analyze these, right? So a lot of people do that today. We are not just on digital. So all other aspects of democracy, how we analyze, the political aspirations, and how we analyze certain markets, dominant markets, how we analyze economic challenges. So these all are also analyzed the same tools which are already developed. Similarly, we also need to deploy these tools, theoretical frameworks, to understand. But at the same time, you have case studies which you know better, which from your own point of view, whether they are they are serving us, they are not serving us, they are it's not rewarded properly or not, that you will see that.
There is another question by Devendra. What is the digital revolution and its impact on poor people?
Yeah. So, as I said again, the digital revolution, it would have impacted poor as well, right? Similarly, how it impacted everyone. But what happens is when you don't have access to technology, because poor tend to not to have technology access, right? Like, let's say smartphone, let's say they don't have internet. Even they have smartphone, there is no continuous quality internet. And similarly, digital skills, they don't have access to skills, access to literacy. So when you don't have this, the digital space, digital revolution, the devices, the products, services, and even the government, what offers the public good, won't be productive, right? Because what you do is you tend to use only what is the others, like who are not poor. They have access to them 24/7, and they have surplus time, surplus resources, so they use for entertainment, they can use for productive purposes, they can use, but they can divide the time the way they want, because they have the flexibility, resources, access, technology, and money. So where they can buy these services. But it is in terms of the poor, they don't have this luxury, to use whenever they want, So they can only use when they can get Wi-Fi freely, right? And but that's not quality internet, right? So when you have broadband at home, at office, at you have your own, you pay, and then monthly fee, and then rent, and then you get your own phone, and you will have a better access. So that's a major divide, right? So one is accessibility to the quality device, quality internet, and quality skills as well. If you don't have skill, what do? You don't know what to do. You may watch some videos, but what will you do if you don't have skills? How do you learn them? How do you improve your digital literacy? So how do you make transactions on internet so that your transaction cost is low? You don't have to go to the shop. You don't have to go to from village to town or town to bigger city. You can do everything sitting in your own space. You don't have to spend money and time, which are crucial for poor. So that you can do sitting wherever you are by accessing these tools. But if you are poor, it's not easy, right? So this is how it is impacting. So though digital is it is giving a great benefit, but it obstructs, which means actually it is creating inequality between poor and rich. I hope I answered.
Thank you, Shrikant. Now I'm unmuting Subish. Subish, can you please? Subish, you can ask the question directly.
Thank you, Anup. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Thank you for that. This was a very wonderful lecture. I've been into this tech policy, to reading some more. So that's why I'm asking this. All of your answers and this discussion is converges into that point that government have a role in this. Especially, government's role. What I'm meaning is the public digital infrastructure. So, as a community, as a collective, how should we press for it much more? I'm asking that. I'm much more interested in developing and creating a conversation with regards to this public infrastructure development.
Yeah.
So how can you direct me to some more readings on that? That's what I'm asking. Thank you. It was a wonderful lecture.
Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you. So this is an important question. That's what, when I said, it's the collective, there are, frameworks, right? So one is the dominant, the best framework. What we have today is Ostrom's, common pool resources. So how people come together, pool the resources, and similar interests they're also from similar socio-economic background. They all come together, and which is not possible for to develop a platform or to develop uh, any tools. So as an individual or as a family, or as just one, three, four families, but it is possible as a community coming together, who has similar interests. So one is like, let's say, now people are talking about the work, right? So platform work. So one example is that. So where platform work, people are getting unionized, right? They are starting their own associations. So by associating, they are also, there is an affinity, right? So one to each other, there is a affiliation. So they are all from similar kind of backgrounds. They work, as either platform work. When I say either they are, Uber drivers, or they are actually Swiggy delivery, or they are, what they do. They go through a lot of issues, so which are sometimes life threatening, right? So, but as a collective, they can come together because they have, understanding of that particular, business activity, and they also have, connecting, right? Connectivity, like they can connect to each other by virtue of being in the same trade or same profession, and it is easier for to unionize. But when once you unionize, that is one kind of collective where you can put pressure on on the platform owner and the investor to have a better bargain, better deal, better rights as a labor right, minimum work hours, minimum wage, and insurance, life insurance. These all you can press for it, but at the same time, but that is one aspect of it. But the other thing is, so you, by knowing each other, you can also bring together everyone and demand government, or you start your own organization, demand government to chip in, right? To, as an investor, or if government is, because usually, very few governments do that. There are governments, certain city governments are doing it. There are, there are funds for these kind of community collectives to develop their own platforms, to develop their own think tanks, civil society organization, their own media outlets. There are actually in the West, but in the global South, unfortunately, we don't have those resources with the government. And governments, even they have resources, they divert to something else. They wouldn't be interested in doing so. So in that case, obviously common pool resources is the best way to go about it, but that is a long-term process. It is a painful process. It is also concerted efforts. You need a great a leader who can bring, but at the same time, not to be superstar, but to bring people and then work together and make a collective. Like, I will give you a fantastic example. What here today, this Digital Nalanda itself is a great initiative of that particular common pool resources initiative, which is a digital platform, which is from the community, by the community, and which is a collective. So this is how it has to be done, but it takes longer time to pull the resources, to pull people, to bring confidence, and to build the trust, because trust is the most important thing if you want to make a successful venture as a collective. So I hope that answers, because there's no one right way, but we have examples, right? So in front of our own eyes.
Shrikant bhai, there is another question from YouTube. So I have put it on the chat.
Okay.
It is by Yash Chahande.
Yeah. Usually technological disruption precedes policy intervention. Yeah, at least in the digital innovation space. Do you think this is dangerous? And yes and no, because the thing is, this is when we talked about the entrepreneur don't think about regulation, right? So he innovates and then he thinks the market, he wants to capture the bigger market or the dominant market, and then he wants to become a monopoly. That's the whole idea of entrepreneur, innovator entrepreneur. So the thing is, sometimes the early regulation is possible. So where we call it today living labs, or we call test beds, or they are basically the regulators. What they do is they provide a space for entrepreneurs to start up, basically startups, to to run their startup or to operate it in certain regulated environment where the supervision is already there from the regulation. And once they see, like let's say the unmanned vehicles, right? Driverless cars. So driverless cars, so the regulator, who is the transportation authority, basically, so in the US or elsewhere, anywhere. So what they do is they do the test runs on the road and they monitor it. And they monitor not just the drive and test drive, but how data is collected, how data is, because the connected, because basically these cars are connected cars. They take the data from the, from different cars, and they develop that intelligence, where to stop, how to maintain distance, what paths to take. So this intelligence is developed by training, the algorithm basically over the data, because you have collected the data, and this data, if you want to make it intelligent, obviously you need to make it sharp, and then make it a structured insight where you can use it. So that only is possible through algorithms trained on the data, which is AI, basically artificial intelligence. So this artificial intelligence, what kind of challenges it when the car is on the road without the driver, what kind of challenges it faces. So you have a driver, but you are monitored continuously, with driver, without driver, how this is operated, how it functions on the road, and off the road, and when it is charging, when it is because it's a mostly electric vehicle, it's a chargeable renewable sources or lithium batteries. So it is how how sustainable it is, how responsibly they have designed the whole system, not to tinker with the privacy of the passengers. And at the same time, this data can be used by the public authorities to remove the traffic congestion, and to make lesser accidents. So to bring changes to make the system more precision, to bring precision to the system. So these things, they test it basically under the supervision. Then once you are done with this, then they give the certification, like, yeah, now this innovation works, so you are free to be on the road, but with a lesser supervision, where the rules are laid now based on that test, right? The test gives them certain insight to the regulatory body, what works, what doesn't work, whether they are obstructing the innovation by deploying certain kinds of regulations and restrictions, or no. If they put all the privacy restrictions, then data collection is not possible. If data collection is not possible, then the connected cars won't work, because you don't have insight on the regarding the road safety. You don't have insight of the traffic light, how to read the traffic light, whether it is if it is a red, you have to stop. So it is only given through the data, right? So the lot of data is covered. And at the same time, if accident happens, whom should be called first? Either family or insurance company. Whom should be called first? The system has to design that way. So there are ethical problems. How do you so if somebody is hit, who has to be responsible? Either car manufacturer or the car owner, or the one who delivered the car, or the technology owner who supplied the technology or AI system to the car? So who is responsible now? So there is an ethical question. So these questions to be answered, people are testing, in the test, they are called live, living labs or test beds. So these are some of the ways to do that. But as you said, of course, there's a pacing problem. They call it pacing problem. So where first innovation happen, then regulation follows. But they have recognized it. Earlier, they were not recognizing it. So that's where they had a huge problem. Which sector, which regulation, whether we need to have overarching regulation or we need to have sector specific regulation, or if it is a technology company, then how do you a transportation authority can intervene into Uber, because Uber says it's a technology company. There is an industry or sectoral classification problem. So these challenges were earlier a big problem, but now they are they are able to tackle, because now they understand this is a problem. So now with these strategies like living labs and test beds, they are trying, but I don't say that's completely foolproof. But yeah, there are incremental and slow improvements I see.
Thank you, Shrikant Bhai. I think there are no more questions left. So thank you so much. And today was the introductory lecture. So hopefully, we will upload this lecture, and we will inform the students also. So many of the students might have missed the lectures, but they can always watch it on our website. So thank you so much, Shrikant Bhai.
Thank you, Anubhai. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Take care, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Next week, yeah. So thank you very much. Thank you for attending.
Yeah. Bye-bye.